What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Lone Wolv Podcast. I'm your host, Wolfson, and today's episode, we got a special guest in the building. This guy is being known in the filmmaking industry, and he's a writer in the one and only country of Iceland. Please welcome Óli Bjarki. Now, Óli and I had an interesting conversation because we actually met through a mutual friend that hosts Yu-Gi-Oh! Content once in a while, and he and I managed to meet each other since we're both into Yu-Gi-Oh! Nerd talk, here we go. And as soon as we started talking to each other and he told me what he does, I got interested. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And just immediately right there, I told him, it's like, hey, would you come to the show? So I'm so happy that he said yes, because in this episode, it's going to be a 3-part series episode. That's right, because we talked a lot. But it was a lot of good insights because we actually went through all the stuff that he went through as a filmmaker, as a writer, to all the way to where he is right now, and all his achievements and accomplishments. And at the end of the show, we just basically kick ourselves out into Yu-Gi-Oh! And start going out and see what we like or we don't like. And this is actually a very good episode because this is basically the bridge that this show needed to go to other industries or other scenes of the entertainment industries. Not only now talking or taking over the EDM scene, we're also going to be hitting some of the filmmaking industry, and we're also going to be tackling some other industries as well. Be sure to like and subscribe for your weekly episodes at the Lone Wolv Podcast for SoundCloud, Spotify, Heart Radio, Apple Podcast. Did I say Apple Podcast? Did I say SoundCloud? Spotify? No. And the YouTube channel at the lonewolfpod.com. That's lonewolfpod.com, when you can check all your latest episodes. You can also follow me at twitch.com and any other social medias at Wolfson Music, where you can actually check all my recent updates, clips, and if you want to see the episode before it's released, you can also check it out on Twitch. Now coming soon, that Twitch, I'll be much more active, and I will be able to stream stuff in Twitch and YouTube for any of my gaming side. That's right, guys. I'm gonna have my own gaming, in which you guys are just gonna experience me playing video games and any of the stuff that I enjoy to do. So, why not? Everybody gets to see now how well informed I am into video games, how good I am into video games. I hope so. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. This is the Lone Wolv Podcast. Boom!
It goes through, I can finally I can have a green light to write the pilot.
Yeah, man. So that's what's gonna be like a TV series. What's it gonna be based on?
So it's about these 3 people, 3 like young adults, around my age, like 20s, and they kind of lack a purpose in their lives. And 2 of them are a boy and a girl, and they've been close friends since childhood. And there's this sudden tragedy that happens to them, like when they're just reaching adulthood, still in their 20s. Like they've reached adulthood, but there's this tragedy. Like the boy's mother and the girl's father are found dead in a cabin, and they have been like skinned alive. So, and they were having an affair. So, and boy's father was suspected of the murder, and he's been thrown in prison. So now they're kind of like, they have no purpose. Because they work now, they're currently working for the girl's mother at this like hamburger joint, just
right.
And they're both very smart, but they like don't know what to do with their lives. But then like they noticed before their mother and father died, like their parents were found, they were behaving strangely. They were complaining about a noise that only they seemed to be hearing, like this high-pitched thing, like someone was constantly whistling in their ear, but no one else could hear it. And the boy and the girl they're both in a relationship with 2 people, and they're both unhappy in the relationship because the girl's with an abusive dude, and the boy is in a relationship with a girl who's emotionally abusive. So they've kind of spiraled ever since the tragedy happened. So this one night, the boy and the girl, they go to the cabin where they found their parents, and they're just kind of reminiscing about how times were before it all happened. And then they wind up getting kind of drunk together, and they wind up kissing, but they don't do anything further because they realize like we're not going to cheat like our parents did. And suddenly they start hearing a whistling in their ears
simultaneously.
Yeah. And they're both noticing, like, even though they don't live in the same block or anything, they start noticing this shadowy figure standing outside their houses, like watching them. And it's like, is this the same thing that happened to our parents? Because they only hear it like in a low pitch. And when they're near each other, the pitch kind of goes up.
Oh.
And so the boy goes to visit his father in prison and starts talking about it. And he says, I've actually been kind of discussing this with someone from your school, so who's kind of been specializing in these weird things. So they meet up with this third guy who becomes one of the protagonists as well. And what he does is that he's kind of spent his whole life reading and reading and getting to know all these urban legends and like these supernatural happenings all over the world. And he says, like, this might be this. And they read about this urban legend about a man who whistles to people who are sinning because they kissed while in a relationship. They
right. It considers a sin in a biblical sense.
Yeah. And so they start reading more about this guy, and he was a priest who found his wife with another man, and him being a man of a cloth, he just lost his mind and murdered them. And then he was killed for the crime. So now his ghost is kind of punishing sinners.
Oh.
And so in the pilot, they realize, like, can we kind of stop him? So they go to this church and they start like, we have to draw him out. So they go near each other and they start hearing the whistling again. And so they try kissing again. They just try doing like sinful things. And then suddenly the pitch becomes so loud that they just can't bear it. They fall to their knees. And then the shadowy man, like 7 feet tall, appears before them. And the third guy like slams down on church bells, and the sound makes the creature, the shadowy man, just scream in agony because he used to be a man of the cloth,
right.
But now he's not. He's a demon.
Yeah.
So he vanishes into thin air. And now, because since the three of them, this was the spark they needed to get their lives more excited. So they decide to like see if there's anything more happening so they can kind of stop it. So that's what the series is about. It's just 3 people traveling, taking down like these local urban legends or supernatural happenings all over Iceland. And so in episode 2, they would go to this place called Hvítarnes, which is supposedly the most haunted house in Iceland. And the pitch is a 10-episode first season about all this kind of stuff.
Oh wow. Is that like an hour long or like 40 minutes or 30? What's more or less the time frame? Because as you were explaining me what the story, the synopsis of the pilot, I was already imagining all the stuff that was happening. And I feel like nah, this cannot be a 20-minute episode. Like I can feel like a 40-minute, with commercials and whatnot.
Yeah. I think it's probably gonna be the 45-minute mark or something, probably 45, 50.
Yeah, that actually sounds very interesting. It's very creative, like I had to ask you, like, where did all this like imagination, creativity came from? Like, where did it all started?
I've just always been kind of like fascinated with horror because I kind of want to know. I'm more fascinated about horror when it's truly something like when the fear plays more of a part in it, and it's just about finding what scares us the most. And I was when I was a kid, I was terrified of the dark. Like I couldn't sleep in my room with the lights off until in my teens because I just couldn't bear being in the dark.
Right.
And I've always been fascinated by ghosts, and like I didn't used to believe in ghosts until like last year because I actually saw one of my own.
Really?
That's crazy. Yeah, I was driving back to my school where I studied film, and it was insane snow the whole way, and had I not gotten back to the school that night, I actually would have been stuck in Reykjavik, which is Iceland's capital. I would have been stuck there for another week because it was just it just hailed down snow for the entire week, and I actually wound up getting stuck inside the dorms because of the snow through that week. And so I'm driving, and I had to take like this new. They had closed down one of the main roads to get there because of the weather. So I had to take this whole new route, which I had never explored, and I was just driving aimlessly, and it's so dark, and I'm all alone, and it's like 9 p.m. or something, but it's really dark because it's winter, and I'm driving, and I've been driving for so long, just completely alone, and then suddenly, like 20 meters ahead of me, I see this man, and he's walking like just on the side of the road, and I was like, I could see him so clearly. He was like wearing this wool cap, and he had on this orange vest, and he had like these blue he was basically dressed in what our local search and rescue teams would be dressed in. So I was like, shit. And I was like, why is he walking here? I thought, I have to give this man a ride. Like, he can't be walking here. This is insane. So I kind of started slowing down the car, and I could still see him. Like, it was like clear as day as I'm seeing you. And then I just kind of looked down for a bit to fix the heating in my car. And then I looked up, and he wasn't there anymore. So I stopped the car because I thought, because he was walking on the side of the road and came down to a bit of a slope, I thought he had maybe tripped.
Yeah. And
I stopped. Yeah.
And you just thought that, it's like, oh, shoot, probably he tripped. Let me help him out. And then.
Yeah, I stepped out of the car into the blistering snow, and then there were no tracks in the snow. There was nothing. Nothing. And I got back in my car and just kept driving. And I was like, this was insane. And I told my friend, one of my closest friends, about this. And almost a year to the date, he called me the other day, and he asked me, like, hey, remember when you told me that you saw this guy like walking on the side of the road or something? I was like, yeah. And he said, like, where were you? Where exactly were you driving? And I said, because I couldn't exactly remember, but I said, like, I hadn't yet reached one of the one of the cabins that you drive past to stop, one of the local stops.
Yeah.
And I said, I hadn't reached this part. That was like my next stop. And he said, no way, dude, because that's my next stop. And I just saw someone walking on the road there.
Oh.
Like almost a year to the date.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was insane.
Wow. Yeah, we got a little similarities on that. I wish I can remember stuff that has happened to me when I was young, but I know that my cousins have experience with ghosts before. I haven't personally seen it, but I have heard stuff. Like not that. When I mean heard stuff, it's not like somebody told me something. Like, no, I mean heard stuff as if like I heard like a low end, like a sudden silence out of nowhere, like a chilling breeze, like a little cracking, like weird stuff, like bumps or thunks, stuff like that. Like even today, I've always noticed stuff like that as like what the hell was that? And I always try to believe like there's gotta be a scientific explanation to why I'm hearing all this type of stuff. But there's this part of me in my brain that says maybe it's not scientific, maybe it is spiritual.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of scary to mingle down that little realm, and it's very, very blurry because not everybody is a firm believer about ghosts, or the paranormal as it should, but I feel like that's like where I have heard this. I heard, all right, have you heard stories that there's such thing as aliens, like aliens from outer space, right? A lot of people believe in them, and a huge amount of people don't believe in them. I'm a believer that we're not alone in this universe.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that we're alone. Like this planet Earth is like the only human beings or the human or anything thing living existence in this entire galaxy. Like, it's impossible. I do believe that there's actually beings outside there that we haven't discovered, or have we? But it comes to that power of fear, knowing that they do exist, but you choose to deny it. And I feel like that's a very common thing from us humans, that we choose to deny it because we don't want to believe that it's true.
Yeah, that's like cosmicism for you. That's like with the stories of H.P. Lovecraft. Like, there's always something bigger out there, but to choose to not acknowledge it is the bigger crime.
Yeah.
But also, to answer your question about like the ideas and creativity, regarding the question, are you just talking about like horror or just like writing in general?
In general, like whether what came this idea that like you decided like, okay, let me write this down about horror. Like, you already mentioned about the horror part. Now I want to know, like, okay, what actually got you started to do this stuff?
It's actually like, when I was a kid, I was always like a pretty big, I was a pretty out there person, as in like I watched movies like religiously, and that was because my grandmother, she would always like watch cartoons with me and movies and such. And it was never like I would act out scenes, but it was never enough for me to just say the lines. I actually had to do the voices and accents and everything.
Really?
And yeah, I did quite a lot of impersonations as a kid, and so one of my heroes growing up was Robin Williams, because he was such an outlandish person. And when I saw him doing stand-up when I was only a kid, I saw him on TV, and I was like, I'd only seen him as an actor, but then I saw this, and that's actually what I wanted to do. Like, first I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and I've actually tested in that. I have done a stand-up special. It was fun, but I realized somewhere later, like when I was a kid and we'd be playing with action figures or like in costumes playing superheroes and what have you, I was always the one creating the stories. Like with the action figures and stuff, it was always like I was always creating the scenarios, and sometimes I would just do the dialogues. And even when I was, if I was playing video games, just playing a solo video game, I would always be imagining like, what is he thinking about now? Because the characters don't speak in video games unless it's in cutscenes. And I was just like, I would just kind of be saying out loud what I thought he was thinking at the moment. It was always about something. And like the older I got, I realized it was kind of, I just liked creating. I just liked making stuff up. But regarding to filmmaking, it wasn't until I saw the first Pirates of the Caribbean.
Wow.
It was. I saw that. It came out in 2003. I saw it in 2004 or 5, but I had this like double disc DVD, and I just could watch that movie over and over again. And then one time I put the wrong disc in, and that was the behind the scenes features, and it went like right into this like costume rehearsal, or not costume rehearsal. It was just Jeffrey Rush and Johnny Depp doing the sword fighting scene between Barbossa and Jack Sparrow, out of costumes, and they were still like doing the sword fights and the dialogues, and then this guy would step in between them, Gore Verbinski, the director. And I was like, that fascinated me so much, because this was the first time I noticed how films were made. Because when you're a kid, you just think movies just appear. Like,
right.
You never, just they're just shipped through and they're already like complete. But then I saw this and I was like, I saw the whole process, and I just thought that was so cool. And I was like, and that was when I like knew like this is what I want to do when I'm a grown up, because I was just realizing they're just telling a story. Mm-hmm. That's all I want to do.
Wow, that's actually pretty good, man. I like that story. You know, as you were talking about that stuff, we got a lot of similarities, you and me, actually. Because as I was growing up, I like watching all these Looney Tunes and Disney characters and whatnot. And even I remember when I was a kid, I do the reenactment of those scenes, even though in my head I'm doing the exact same thing as in the shows, but in real life it's like, nah, I'm just like dancing around and doing other crap in the living room. But I do actually was reenacting and with the voice as well. So I will just go with Goofy and go like, gosh, oh, yuck, oh, yuck,
oh. Yeah, exactly.
And then you go with Scooby-Doo, it's like, hello, Raffy. So, that type of stuff actually got me into the whole entertainment industry. And one of the other things that you said about the Pirates of the Caribbean, which I piqued my interest when you start saying that, I had like a similar story with that as well. Because every time I watch a show that I generally enjoy, like mostly on the anime side, that's when I do this, I generally imagine myself, I'm in that world and I'm just another character along with a protagonist. And then, I just imagine doing all this crazy other shit and other missions and whatnot, whatever you want to call it. Say like, if we're in the Naruto world, I'm one of the leaf ninjas from a different village, If I'm in the Bleach, I'm a Soul Reaper. If I'm into the Gundam universe, I'm a Gundam pilot that's trying to save everybody's life, like no more war and shit, And that type of stories, I always write it down on the side, like as if it was a journal or a diary. But let's just say that one day I want to pitch this to somebody somewhere in the entertainment. It's like, hey, this is my idea, stuff like that. I always find it very fascinating and interesting, and it all boils down to the creativity of oneself. It's like not many people can do like the type of things that you can do,
Yeah.
And it's incredible where the inspiration all started, where it was all rooted down to it. And how I actually came out to be part of the audio industry, more in the music, I actually, like, as I was growing up, I enjoy going to these disco parties or these house parties. When you're a teenager, you get invited, and then there's a big DJ with big speakers. I always intrigued with what goes behind the DJ. Like, how is the DJ putting these effects? How is he putting all these lights? How is he transition to one side to another seamlessly without anybody noticing it? And that got me started to being a DJ for over 15 years, playing to these music festivals in the EDM scene, and working with such great artists all around the world and studios and whatnot. And now I am where I am, where I'm starting my podcast career. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's just a fascinating story to hear from people, like how it all started, and what was the inspiration behind it. Now, do you still get these sort of inspirations as from like you said, from the Pirates of the Caribbean, some other movies or TV series that you've seen over the years?
Well, yeah, I do, because like I love seeing like films in the theater, and I especially love just when I see something new and fresh, like especially in today's like film economy where everything is a sequel, reboot, remake. But when I see something that has been done a million times before, but you see a fresh take on it, for me, that's always like there's still like really creative voices out there. Like when The Haunting of Hill House came on Netflix.
Oof.
That is one of my favorite television programs of all time, because like I love horror, and we've all seen the haunted house trope a million times. But it was just the thing about The Haunting of Hill House is like it's not about just the house. It's about these people lived in a haunted house, but what happened to their lives afterwards. And I was like, this is such a fresh take on it, because they're still haunted by a house they lived in 25 years ago. And I was just like, this is insane. And what I loved about The Haunting of Hill House is usually when horror films or any type of films uses this cutting back and forth between time, it's like when you see a flashback and someone who's alive in the future timeline, and we go to the past timeline, we're seeing like this scene that's supposed to be full of tension and danger, but we know they survived. It was like, usually that doesn't get anything out of me. But regarding The Haunting of Hill House, it's like why it worked for me is just we're seeing what happened to them that made them so afraid, what made them so damaged. And it was just, like I said, it was a breath of fresh air each episode.
I agree. Like haunting, I like enjoying good horror movies and TV series as long as they do it the right way. Like when the American Horror Story started, I enjoyed the first couple of seasons, and then after season 4, it kind of died out for me. Even though I still watch it, but I kind of felt like there's no more originality as you, or it's the same magic as you guys had in the first 3 seasons or so. So then when The Haunting of Hill House came, I was just blown away. I was blown away, and it's because of what you said, because of like the concept that they took is like, yeah, it's a haunting film, but there's just more to it. There's like and believe it or not, there were some scenes that I got scared. They got me on the jump scares and those little few moments, but and they do it on purpose, so you don't realize it. You don't realize it because the whole time you're just seeing the perspective of each of the characters, and then all of a sudden something just snaps at you and you're like, holy crap, what the hell?
Yeah, it's because they don't use that many jump scares in the show, but when they do use them, it's never to directly, like, it's never too in your face. The reason it's there, it's the jump scare is actually the tension reliever. Like the scene in the car where the two sisters are arguing and
and then all of a sudden
screaming at each other, and then Nellie comes between them, and it's just like, oh, and you get scared, but you're just so relieved that they're not fighting anymore.
Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. I didn't saw it in that way. Now that you mention, as I recollect, it kind of made sense now. But I mean, they executed it perfectly, man. That's exactly how you're supposed to, like, this is how horror genre needs to improve. You need to adapt to other genres, because I can put this series as a horror genre, but it has some dramatic scenes out of it, like there's and they did it perfectly. Have you seen the second season, The Hunter of Bly Manor?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I'm kind of torn because, like, with The Haunting of Hill House, Mike Flanagan wrote, directed, edited, shot every episode, but he was only the series consultant for the second. He wrote and directed the first episode of Bly Manor, but he was only and he was the consultant and producer on Bly Manor. But like, there is a reason why Bly Manor Hill House worked so well, is because Flanagan has that like extra sense of density to him when he makes stories. His stories are always like, his themes are always on point. It's never like in your face with it. Because like, regarding that, like when I told you how I interpreted the jump scare, like that's something like some people don't pick that up immediately, but I felt like the people who were writing and directing Bly Manor, they were kind of just spelling it out to me what everything was about. And well, Bly Manor was creepy. Bly Manor was creepy, but I never felt a sense of dread. I never felt that sense of horror from it. But it's more of a character-driven story in that way, just like Hill House. But with Hill House, you have the perspectives of all these different characters when they're younger and when they're older, and you can kind of pick and choose like which character are you following the most, even though you kind of feel for all these people.
Right.
But with Bly Manor having the au pair being just the central figure for the story, I just didn't feel myself connecting to any of the other ones because they were never a focus for me.
That's an interesting take out of that. And now that you mention it, like there were some things that, like they could have done better at this, and they could have done better on the other part. I thought it was a good season, but
yeah, I didn't hate it.
No, I didn't.
But I didn't love it.
Exactly, because I sometimes I feel like these type of series or even movies, sometimes in movies, it's like you execute it so perfectly and great at the first season or the first movie that it's hard to top that if you're making a sequel out of it, And what do you think about that stuff? Like, we see that very often on many TV series and movies, and you've seen that everybody prefers the first out of the second. And it's because I feel like either the studios are cash grabbing stuff right now? Is like we need to do this like right now, while the pen is hot. What's your take on that?
Well, sometimes I do prefer sequels to the original, but that's when someone from the original team creatively, when they know what to build upon and what to do thematically and also dramatically. But like, there's a reason people love The Empire Strikes Back over the original Star Wars. It's because they took what the first film gave us, but they expanded so much more upon it and for all the characters. And for me, regarding sequels, the sequels should always be more about more of the world that was created. For me, like, if you look at Empire Strikes Back, and let's take another sequel that I don't think gets enough credit, Dead Man's Chest, the direct sequel to the first Pirates.
Right.
That is such an amazing sequel to me because, again, they took the characters and what they had built upon with the characters in the first film, but they expanded the lore and the universe of it. So for me, it's like the first Pirates films is about like, okay, so this is a world with pirates and you've seen these characters, but let's now look at the world that they actually live in. Like, hey, this is a pirate in a normal man's world, but now let's put a man in the pirate's world. And like, a sequel should always be like the world should be more dangerous. It needs to be dirtier, and it needs to be like, what was the 3 rules? It was like, bigger, dirtier, and more dangerous. And you can apply that to The Empire Strikes Back. Like, you see all these new worlds. You see Dagobah, which is just a dirty swamp, and you see Cloud City, and the planet of Hoth, which is just totally dangerous, and you're expanding an entire galaxy. But if you take a look at Dead Man's Chest, we're going far beyond the ocean. We're going on all these horrifically dangerous planets, and then you introduce stuff like the Kraken and Davy Jones, and the whole thing expands.
Yeah.
So I really admire the fact for Dead Man's Chest for just taking these characters and expanding the world instead of what most sequels do. I don't blame them for like giving us more of the characters, but if you're only giving us these characters, but it's like, it's these characters again, but nothing more. You know what I mean?
Sounds like The Matrix.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, because they give us all the ideas in The Matrix, but it's just like, here's these characters again doing very similar things. And there's nothing more to it. But if you look at Empire Strikes Back or Dead Man's Chest, or what are other great, like The Dark Knight, for example.
Oh, yes.
It's just like, you look at the world the second film creates based on what they had character-wise for the first world, and it makes thematical sense. So you just go, this is why I prefer this, because now I have more of the world, and I already like these characters, so let's just build more around them.
Damn, now that you mention it, like some of the greatest movies that make good sequels, you're right. It's more exploration to the outside of the character. Like, there's more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, that was my favorite of the trilogy, actually.
Yeah. That was pretty good.
Yeah, and I watched the 5-hour version of it. I don't know if it's a 5-hour full version. I know it's a lot, but yeah, I enjoy it more than Fellowship and a little bit more than Return of the King, because I guess for that sense, like, you're exploring the whole world. Like, we know that we need to get these people to the ring, but now everybody's on their own patterns, and now we all have to go out and explore, and then there's still more crap happening at simultaneously that we have to take care of, and then at the end of the movie we all come together. It was like, okay, full circles. I like that.
Yeah, it's like one of the greatest sequels of all time just came out recently, and that was Blade Runner 2049, and that was just giving us more of like, what more can we do with this world? And like, Deckard doesn't even come into it until like the 2-hour mark.
Oh wow.
It's because they're expanding so much upon the lore and world building of the first one that they're giving us these new characters, but we're so like entranced with the world building of it. And so that for me is what all sequels should do. It's just like I said, we're not just coming here for the characters again, because like with Pirates and like we've been talking about, we're coming back to this world. We want to see more of that also.
I think that's one of the things that Warner Brothers is failing with these comic book movies. Like they're making a great first movie, but when the sequel hits, it's not landing per se as it should, you know? Like Marvel's doing a great job in those comic book movies, as like they're creating they're developing the character, make a sequel, and then they're expanding that character and the world around it, and then before you know it, you got an entire franchise universe evolved with that one character, and then boom, you got 20 million movies and TV series.
Yeah, but like that's why some of those sequels like really work, and like why some of them are mostly preferred to the original movie. Like if you look at the first Thor and then you watch Thor Ragnarok, there's a reason why people prefer Ragnarok.
Absolutely. That Thor Ragnarok, out of the three Thors, that was my favorite one. I feel like Dark World didn't execute well of what it should, but Ragnarok was it was everything that I wanted. And I can't wait for the fourth movie to come around.
That's why you can apply all of these. Yeah. But you can apply all these same rules to Ragnarok. Like there's a reason why it works. It's because they're giving us, like, we know Thor, we know Loki, we know what these characters are about, but then you give us this whole thing of like jumping between all these different interesting worlds. And it's just like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted from Thor 2.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of going back to the originals like Planet Earth and Asgard, and, you know, you're not exploring much. You're just exploring in between those two worlds, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So that's like one of my favorite trilogies to come out just in recent years. Like there's so many trilogies nowadays, but the new Planet of the Apes films, they're amazing.
You know, I haven't even seen them yet, and everybody, really? And I know, like I definitely have that on my watch list out of all other movies I don't want to watch, but I've seen clips here and there, and I was like, oh wow, like that's something I really want to watch, and people have been telling me that trilogy is amazing, and
yeah, they like Matt Reeves came on to direct the second one, and he also like did an uncredited rewrite on it, and then he wrote and directed the third one. He's a incredibly gifted filmmaker, and I have been so excited ever since the day he was announced as the director for the next Batman film. So
for the Robert Pattinson one, yeah.
Fun fact about that, I have been champion Robert Pattinson for Batman for years now for some reason.
Yeah,
it's just me and my best friend, we have this, like, we sometimes do these fan castings, like who doesn't? And we only had two names left on our list. It was if they want to go for the older, wiser, like 20 years experience Batman, you go with John Hamm from Mad Men. Because he looks like Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But then we decided, like, but what if they go for like a fresh take on not a fresh take, but what if they go for a Batman who's just fresh in the game? He's been a Batman for a year or two. He's still getting it. And then we both decided, like, I think Robert Pattinson would work. And then he was casted like a year later, which we just found amazing.
Wow. So you guys basically predicted who's gonna be like the next Batman, depending on which direction they were going.
Yeah, so we just said it's either John Hamm or Robert Pattinson, depending on the age and like where Batman is as a character. And when we saw the Robert Pattinson was casted, we were just like, yes, that is just a home run.
So tell me, do you have high hopes? Like, are your expectations are high for this Matt Reeves movie?
Yeah, well, with everything we've been given so far and everything I've seen, it just looks like something that it honestly looks like a Batman film that I myself would want to make. Because my friend and I, the same best friend, we've been tampering. Like sometimes we just like we sit down because we often write things together. We sat down this one evening and it was like, okay, what if we were to make a Batman movie? And we did this whole thing, and it just kind of, with everything we've seen so far, it just kind of felt like it. And with Matt Reeves as director, he's a director I really trust. He, especially having seen like War for the Planet of the Apes, when I saw that in the theater, I cried. It's a beautiful movie. And he has the same composer, Michael Giacchino, doing the score. And he's an incredible composer. He did the themes for the new Star Trek films. He did Spider-Man Homecoming. He did Doctor Strange.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, he's a great composer. And having Robert Pattinson, the guy we actually wanted, it looks like everything we've been asking for recent years. And it was just like, finally, our patience has been rewarded.
Man, I got high expectations, but I honestly, as a consumer, as a fan, I did not expect that Robert Pattinson to be casted to be as the next Batman. And Batman is one of my favorite comic book overall, and if you're gonna execute the Dark Knight, I am having a very high expectations. Maybe it's my own bias because Christopher Nolan literally spoiled me.
Yeah.
Like, he literally spoiled me as to like, okay, this is how the Dark Knight should be acting. Yes, that. And Tim Burton's Batman wasn't bad at all. The Michael Keaton Batman.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that Batman as well, but I feel like the Christopher Nolan is the one that, like, if this is the cap for being Batman, all right, you're supposed to meet the minimum cap and then spend some more, because Ben Affleck didn't execute it to me. Like, to me, he wasn't a good cast to begin with. And a lot of people are saying like, oh, but he was good at that one scene. Yeah, that one scene. It shouldn't be that one scene. It should be the whole thing.
Yeah, I liked Ben Affleck as Batman, but I didn't like the film like at all. But
none of us here.
I liked Ben Affleck, especially in his Bruce Wayne scenes. I thought he did Bruce Wayne really good. I like he kind of just looked the part, like especially in some scenes, like with the jawline and the hair and how he was dressed and how he talked and some of the little smirks he gave. I just like, yeah, that's an insanely good Bruce Wayne. But then when it came to the Batman part, like he had the physicality and the stature of it, but there was just like, it just didn't click. It was just like, there's something missing here. It looks perfect, but it's empty.
Yeah. Basically, that's how I felt, like overall as the Batman from that franchise or that DCU franchise, because I feel like okay, I get it, you're acting, you're getting there, but like, and believe it or not, John Hammond was one of those in my head as like, man, he should have been the Batman. He should have been the next one. He's definitely a great actor, and he definitely has the physique and the structure for it. So I could definitely say it, man, but I have like I said, I have high hopes for Robert Pattinson, and it surprises me from Robert Pattinson because he was already out of franchise movies with Twilight. Like, I'm surprised that he wants to take on another role on another franchise movie, especially when, like I said, I'm having my expectations high on Batman, as to millions of people as well. Like, everybody is putting Robert Pattinson as the Twilight boy, but I've seen Robert Pattinson in other films, and he can act the shit out of it. Have you seen Tenet?
Yeah. That was my favorite film of last year.
Yeah, phenomenal movie. I just watched it just recently. I was just like,
it's so good.
Oh my God, bro. I'm blown away. We could talk about that a little bit. But yeah, like, everybody's putting Robert Pattinson as the Twilight boy. He's not going to execute the Dark Knight. But then I've seen these other films, and I'm going to give that credit to Robert Pattinson. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt because he could definitely act out of it. But again, expectations are high. Yeah. And the trailer did not fail me. It fooled me. It got me like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Also, what's fascinating about the trailer they gave out, it's like the film wasn't even shot to completion. What we saw in the trailer was just like 25% of the film or something.
Jesus.
because they had put like production on halt for.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
And yeah, but the thing about Robert Pattinson is like he's talked about he hated being in Twilight and everything. He just didn't like the experience. But you see him in recent films like Hard Times and like Tenet. He was so good in Tenet. Like I hated him in that movie. Well, I didn't hate the character. I hated how good he was in that film because I was just like, man, if this doesn't turn people around and say he's gonna nail Batman, I don't know what.
No, that I think that convinced me to be like, okay, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt for the next Batman franchise, like because in Tenet, wow, and the whole movie overall to me is like, if you're not gonna give Tenet for best motion, best music, best composure, best picture, best film, best movie of the year, like if you're not gonna give any of those roles, then yeah, the whole thing is rigged as it is. Like
it should definitely win best original screenplay.
Yes,
it's like when I see a film in the theater, I'm usually retyping the script in my head as I'm seeing it. Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of picked up screenwriting. It's just I was just watching it and I was like, how is this scene written? And I'm just kind of like retyping stuff in my head as I'm seeing it. It's just like it's kind of subconsciously, but kind of not. It's just like a typewriter in my head. I'm just like, okay. And when I was watching Tenet, sometimes I would just have to stop because I was like, how do you write a scene like this?
that intro, like the prologue of the movie, that's just like, whoa, like where is this going? Like what is going on with all of this? It's like this is stuff that you normally would not think of. And then when the whole inverse thing, by the way, spoilers alert for anybody who hasn't seen Tenet, but you should be seeing by now. The whole inverse thing came out from the bullet. I was just like, huh? What just happened? I don't know. Christopher Nolan is just a genius because, like, again, this is the same guy who gave us the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, and damn, what other great movies this guy has made? Like, I know he's made like fascinating movies that blows people's mind away.
Yeah, like Memento, The Prestige.
Prestige.
Such a good film, man. That's probably my favorite Christopher Nolan film.
Wow, I totally forgot about Memento and Prestige. That is true.
Yeah, like, and imagine he did most of those, like the greats, like back to back. He did like Batman Begins, Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception. Like, how do you fit that? Like,
how do you even have the time to figure all that at the same time? Like, all of a sudden in Inception, you see a Batman flying over. It's like, wait a minute, is that supposed to be in that film, or wasn't it? He did a great job, and I am looking for many more of Christopher Nolan. And I mean, if he can do more crazy shit like Tenet, which, again, I have to watch it twice to comprehend it, because once it was just like, what? And then the second time I'm like, okay, now I get it. And then I went to the YouTube clips of how explain the whole movie concept is like filling up my blanks. Is like, got you, because I was just blown away. Like, where does the creativity come from creating crazy shit like that?
Yeah, like I said, when I was in the theater, and even when I rewatched it recently, when I was showing it to my brother, I was just watching some of the sequences, and I was like, just like, how do you put that on paper? Like, how is this scene written? Like, how does it read? If I were to read the screenplay, would I be just as like the whole inverse fighting through the airport while this stuff is happening? And I was just like, I don't know how I would write that.
And I'm still trying to figure out how the choreography of that doing that, you know? I'm pretty sure they had to do like how many takes for them to do like one-sided with one person and then the other person, because to do those scenes, the choreography scenes, to go inverted and then forward and then the whole what was his, I keep forgetting his name. Was it John Washington, Denzel's son?
Yeah, John David Washington. Like, how was he able to recreate all those scenes like that, you know? I believe they shot the sequences twice. Like they would do it like they would actually record it like forwards, and then they would record it them doing it the choreography backwards. Like I've seen some of those behind the scenes, and you're just like saying like how do you jump backwards into a front flip?
Yeah. Exactly. Like it's very interesting, you know. I like kudos for Christopher Nolan, man. I can see why he was actually fighting a lot to say don't watch the movie home, put that movie on theaters. Like I can see why.
I think that was the only film I managed to see in theaters. Actually, I went with my best friends. We always see Christopher Nolan films together in the theater. We always make time for a new Nolan film because, like, he makes these films to be an experience. Like, I still haven't seen Interstellar since I saw it in the theater because it was such an experience. We had it like we went to in Reykjavik. We went to the biggest screen with the best audio available, and it was a magnificent experience. And I don't want to spoil it. The experience because I don't want to watch that film now in my living room. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. Speaking about movie theaters and that, what's your take and now where the movie industry or the film industry is shifting now?
Like, I don't like the direction of where it's going, but it's kind of inevitable because like with I kind of agree with like making films specifically for a streaming service, like the Netflix produced series and Netflix produced films. I kind of like that, but I don't like the idea of going to a film studio and shooting so many and wasting so many days, weeks, months, and you're doing all of this and you want to see it in theater, you want to show it to people, you want to do the whole theater experience and meet new people and do the whole Q&A stuff. And it removes so much of the experience of what happens when the film is finally complete, because now it's just like if they do this, there will be no more like world premieres and no more stuff like this, and you can't go and actually like chat and talk to the people behind it. And like if I were if I were to make a film in Hollywood, and I would want to go and I would want to be in the theater to like get genuine reactions instead of just putting it online, because I know like even when people see new movies today, if they're doing it from home, they're still doing something else.
Got you.
Like if someone's watching Tenet for the first time on his laptop, he's still going to be on his phone, and then he's going to miss something. He's going to miss a key ingredient. He's going to miss a key line of dialogue, and then it's just going to go, I don't get what's happening, man. And it's just like, no, because that's what the theater experience is about. It's about people coming together because we all want to see a specific film. Like that's like with Endgame and with many like with theater experience type films, like the new Godzilla versus Kong film. I don't feel like that's a film made for small screens. It's just like, no, you have to see this on a big screen, even though it's not going to be like the greatest movie ever made, but it's clearly made to be seen. Like they're not making films about giant monsters to be watched on someone's phone.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings about that, because as much as I enjoy going to the movie theaters and watch these phenomenal movies in the theaters, and I'll more than happy to do so, it's very hard for me to do it now, because at least here in the States, we still got the whole lockdown procedures, you know, we still got COVID all around, and it's hard for me to go out into the movie theater because I don't know how they actually like whether they did their thing by whether they sanitize it or not, because especially here in Florida, because most of the time the people here in Florida are wild. Wild people. We're a wild species, and you don't know how they sit, how if they sanitize the chair or how they got the social distancing aspect or taking off your mask and stuff. Like we're still cooped up in a whole area, so that kind of worries me. That's why I'm okay to watch the films in my living room. Granted, I'm not like everyone else, because I have a state-of-the-art surround system and I have a nice HD TV that I can actually appreciate that. But there's still that thing in my head. It's like, man, I wish I could have watched this in theaters, because I know that shit will be blasting on me, and that whole screen, I could watch it beautifully like that. But for my sake, for the safety of me and my family, like, I'd rather watch it here. And it sucks because now all the theaters are going out of business. It's gonna become now a part in which movie theaters are gonna be a niche thing. You know, it's like, maybe the big corporation movie theaters are gonna be out of the business, but movie theaters that have a type of bistro in which they can provide you food and trades and wanna make your movie theater experience like legit, they're still gonna be around. And it sucks because I definitely want to watch movies in theaters, but paranoia stuff out of me, I don't want to risk it, like it's not worth me risking it. I can just watch it right here in the comforts of my home. And that's why I got mixed feelings about that. So I was very intrigued of your perspective as a filmmaker and a writer,
Yeah, like I get doing it for the time being, but I really hope, like, once this whole thing
blows out, that
it's over, like, we can go back to theaters, because like I'm pretty selective with going to theaters. Like, I love going to the theater, but I only go to the theater to see the specific films that I've been really looking forward to, like when I saw Tenet, and when I saw like Blade Runner, and like The Nice Guys, or whatever films I've been seeing recently. But it's always just like, I know some films that I'm so excited for, I have to see them in the theater, because that's the way it's meant to be seen. But like, there are some movies that I want to see, but I don't desperately seek them out to the theater. I'll just be like, I'll wait till it's on home video or something. But like, with the films I want to see, I want to go to the mainland. I want to meet up with my best friends. I want to go to dinner with them and chat and like reminisce. And then we go to the theater and we all have a blast. And it's just the whole thing. I just love going to the theater with my friends. It's always fun.
Yeah, I agree. That was my whole niche thing with my cousins. It was just me, my two cousins, one of my cousins' son, and sometimes his brother-in-law. We basically go as a group. Like, we go to any of these movies. We'll go on early in the morning on a Sunday, because that's the time in which we all believe that nobody's gonna be here early in the morning. There's not that much crowded. You can still have a line for popcorn, and then afterwards, after the movie, we could just go eat somewhere and then talk about it, and just like keep spouting information about, like, oh my god, what an amazing movie. But kind of all died down after COVID. I mean, the last time that we did that thing was when we watched Sonic the Hedgehog. That was like February of last year,
Yeah.
And that movie, I mean, say what you're gonna say. It's a family-friendly movie, but I loved it. I was like, okay, that was good. And we were just ready and eager to watch the other movies that were coming out. Mulan, the Black Widow, the Wonder Woman's, the Invisible Man.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, that was a great one. That's a very unique story from the Monster Universal universe.
Yeah, it's just also with the Invisible Man. I just love, like, when you take a concept like that and put a completely new spin on it. That's been one of my main goals, like, going forward. Like, I just want to take something and do something new with it, because like every story has been told in some way or the other. Like, even if you look at Tenet, it's an espionage film, but when you take such a unique spin on how to do it, it just becomes something brand new.
And there's so many of them. What do you think about the whole the last Mummy movie that they make? That I know it was horrible in my perspective, but you may have a different one.
Well, sadly enough, I was excited for it because I love the Brendan Fraser film. I'm a big fan of Tom Cruise. I thought it was just like, yeah, this is kind of a cool idea. But then I saw the film and it sucked.
It's
like, no.
Yeah, they should have left it on Brendan Fraser and that's it.
Yeah, bring back Brendan.
Oh my god. Now, Universal Studios is like they're legit going with this whole monster universe. Like they failed on the Mummy, but then they landed perfectly on the Invisible Man. Now, what do you think is to be the next movie that they've been planned to head, and what do you think it's their spin or where they should head on with?
Well, I know that Leigh Whannell, the writer and director of The Invisible Man, I know he has said he wants to do a Dracula film, and I honestly think I think he'd do a good job because he seems to really understand horror. Mm-hmm. Like he wrote Saw, he wrote Dead Silence, he wrote Insidious. He's written pretty like cool films. And
wow, Saw and Dead Silence?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And he also wrote and directed Insidious 3, which was his directorial debut. So like I think he's an exciting filmmaker to watch. He's only directed like 3 films. I think it was Insidious 3 and then what was it called? Was it called Update? No, what was it called? Upgrade, the sci-fi action film. And then he did The Invisible Man.
I know. Yeah. I know that one.
Yeah. He's a pretty exciting filmmaker to watch. And what I like about him is, like, if you listen to his interviews about The Invisible Man, it just clicked, like, yeah, he completely knows what he's doing because no one would just tackle The Invisible Man without trying to find something completely new with it. And I liked how with The Invisible Man, he put us in the perspective of the victim, because with all these Invisible Man type stories, it's always, the focus is always the Invisible Man, but this time it's just like, no, but what if he were after you? What if you were his target? And that's just like, immediately that's scarier.
Yeah, try to fight up something that you can't even see or comprehend, and then at the same time you losing your shit because you're thinking that this is just not real, and it is.
Yeah, and also the feeling of never knowing if you're alone or not, that would drive me insane. Like, that's why I was so afraid of the dark when I was a kid, because I wasn't afraid of being alone in the dark. I was afraid of not being alone in the dark. It's just like, no, there's something in this room with me,
I agree, man. That when you were kids, that your mom tells you like, "Hey, can you turn off the kitchen lights?" and it's all dark, and you're like, "Yeah, sure." You turn off the lights and you run spat to your room because you believe that's your safe haven. That he can't get me here.
Yeah, exactly.